Okay, so I'm gonna get real for a second. I've been coy on YouTube, but I came out on my Twitter account like last year, I think. Could have been 2019, kind of hard to tell. The pandemic kind of blurs memories together, but yeah, so I am trans and intersex. My little feminist inclination here is a lifelong obsession with gender. And yeah, I just wanted to get real for a moment because what I have to talk about today is deeply personal. So I'm intersex, definitely. What I am specifically, my doctor doesn't know because insurance doesn't cover the genetic testing. It would cost like $4,000 to determine for sure which variant, but it's either de la Chapelle syndrome, which is where you have a traditionally masculine body, but the chromosomes are XX, which is typically what we would expect from a woman. So you have a feminine characteristics that come in as well. Or Klinefelter syndrome, which is XX and then Y. So you have similar, not quite the same intersex attributes. So yeah, that's the thing with me. I really wanted to get that across that intersex people are real. We have lives. We have passions. We spend hours making feminist YouTube videos. We're not just some stupid caricature you'd see in a movie. But Weird Al Yankovic doesn't seem to realize that. Yeah.
Oh, I don't mind when my crotchless panties creep right up on me, and my nipple rings don't bother me too much.
I have been a lifelong fan of Weird Al Yankovic. My father was a big fan of the Dr. Demento show, and he passed on the fandom to me, as well as my mother. When I was as young as 3 years old, I remember being a huge fan of a deep-cut Weird Al song that no one remembers called Don't Wear Those Shoes. We got all the CDs, t-shirts, went to a number of concerts, one of which was 2 states away. We're all Weird Al fanatics. However, through the years, I've had a growing sense of Weird Al not being a fan of me. Weird Al has many jokes at the expense of trans and intersex people, who he consistently depicts as strange, illogical, and worthy of scorn. He has done so all throughout his career, with an early example from 1984, more recent examples from 2014, and as recently as 2018, he has continued to use material from what might be said to be a more ignorant time period, with an eye roll about how political correctness won't cancel him. It's sad because most of his work is great, and I love it. Through researching this video, I've just been laughing so much. He is a great humorist. There are just these landmines of pointless offensive material. I'll be enjoying his material, laughing, and then I'll run headlong into one of these landmines, portraying people like me as less like real people so much as a caricature, seen in transphobic films such as The Damned, Silence of the Lambs, and The Crying Game. I typically like him as a comedic talent, but I find that I can no longer support him when I am forced to contend with the fact that he consistently engages in this fundamental bigotry, depicting trans and intersex bodies, cross-dressing, and general androgyny as gross, surreal, and often perverted subjects to be mocked. I'll be tackling this video in 4 parts. 1. Nazi-sploitation, because Nazis are relevant apparently. 2. The Spectre of Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. 3. All There Is to Know About the Crying Game, and 4. Misandrogyny and Interphobia. Part 1. Nazi-sploitation, 'cause Nazis. Weird Al's 2014 song, Jackson Park Express, follows a creepy man who has a fleeting encounter on a bus with an attractive woman and reads way too deeply into their interaction, with many bizarre assumptions about tiny movements being informative nonverbal communication. A lot of the jokes are pretty random, or a little pervy, and one of the verses goes like this.
I knew she was starting to fall for me, 'cause she crinkled her nose, which unmistakably meant, baby, let's wear each other's clothes and speak in a thick German accent.
The speaker's creepiness is illustrated through having a transvestic fetish, transgressive to social norms in a transphobic way. The reference to speaking German on top of that could just be random, like much of the song is, or intended to come across as a turn-off associated with cultural stereotypes, but it also fits into a context of Weird Al's making this repeated association between queerness and Nazism. As you do! Weird Al makes a series of jokes satirizing sensationalistic daytime television, in which he depicts trashy talk shows featuring guests with uncommon provocative traits as a means of creating conflict for ratings. In his feature film, UHF, he depicts a talk show parodying Geraldo with a humorous description of the upcoming episode that associates Nazis and queerness.
Lesbian Nazi hookers abducted by UFOs and forced into weight loss programs. All this week on Town Talk.
This is soon developed into an association between Nazism and being trans, as is seen in 2 other talk show jokes. In his 1992 song, I Can't Watch This, a parody of MC Hammer's You Can't Touch This, the speaker describes various TV shows that he hates, which is pretty obviously an extension of Weird Al's own tastes. One verse touches on Weird Al's distaste for sensationalistic talk shows with a similar joke as in UHF.
Those weird talk shows about transsexual Nazi Eskimos, they're rude, crude, and vile.
We can put aside the racism of referring to Alaska Natives as the slur Eskimos, or associating them with Nazis for now. His treatment of racial issues is a whole other video's worth of discussion. The joke functions similarly to the line in UHF as a collection of outlandish traits. In addition to simply being weird, the description of transsexuality comes across as gross and offensive alongside the reference to Nazism. He makes a 3rd variant of this joke using cross-dressing in his 1993 song Talk Soup.
I'm just a cross-dressing alcoholic neo-Nazi porno star, as you may have guessed.
Yeah. The similarity to the I Can't Watch This joke implies that he views being trans and cross-dressing as the same or at least equivalent. Like many ignorant cishet people, Weird Al doesn't appear to make a distinction between transsexuality, or being transgender in modern terminology, and transvestism, or cross-dressing. This is just speculation on my part, but I suspect that Weird Al may have watched a few Nazi-sploitation films, and that gave him a mental association between queerness and Nazism that he brought to his work. The Nazi-sploitation cinematic genre combines Weimar Germany's reputation for libertinism, Ernst Röhm's proclivities, and the specter of fascism for the sake of horror and titillation. Under the excuse of Nazis being brazenly taboo anyway, queer directors were able to depict things that they wouldn't otherwise get to do in mainstream cinema, including queerness featured front and center, making a few of them notable examples of early queer cinema. However, they also acted to spread queer phobia in the cishet population, who would naturally think that the films had a point that their queer subjects were as horrific as the Nazi subjects. I believe Weird Al references these sorts of films in the latter context. His descriptions of trans people and crossdressers conflated with Nazism comes across as similar to the depiction of Martin from The Damned, a Nazi whose penchant for cross-dressing is used to illustrate his evil by eliciting knee-jerk reactions of disgust in the viewer. Martin is far from the only example in the genre, but The Damned stands out as particularly notable as an influential Nazi-sploitation film that was actually nominated for an Oscar. In context of Weird Al's overall queer Nazi jokes, the Jackson Park Express verse comes across as about the speaker being creepy for having a fetish like Martin. He wants to put on a woman's clothes and speak in a thick German accent.
Bin in einen Mann verliebt, unweiss nicht in welchen.
The jokes in I Can't Watch This and Talk Soup further evoke Martin, using the references to being trans to evoke repugnance right alongside the Nazi references. Meanwhile, the UHF joke about lesbian Nazi sex workers, hookers is a slur, calls to mind Nazi-exploitation films like Essa Fraulein SS and SS Girls. Classics both. Featuring attractive women getting it on for the straight male gaze, often with actual lesbian Nazi sex worker characters. I suspect the line is constructed to group these traits together as a reference to Nazi-exploitation films for those who would be aware of them. If you recognize the archetype, you laugh at the reference, and if you just find it a collection of outlandish traits, you also laugh. In this way, it's similar to a joke in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, involving the guys thinking of the number 69. If you're older, you get the sexual reference. If you're a younger kid, you laugh at the random reference to a random number. Haha, so random.
If you guys are really us, what number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
To cap off Weird Al's apparent nods to Nazi-exploitation, he seemingly makes a reference to Salo in his 1992 mock interview with Tom Petty. Weird Al has several satirical interviews with celebrities, where he mashes up existing interview footage with his own joke setups that are paid off with out-of-context clips of the celebrities apparently responding to him. One such joke appears to reference the key image of Salo, the kink of making people run around acting like dogs.
I've heard some pretty kinky rumors about you. For instance, I've heard that you dress up your roadies like Girl Scouts and make them run around your backyard barking like dogs.
I do. I go out and watch them every night.
Really? That's hard to believe.
They borrowed a dress from my wife just the other night.
He doesn't specifically say Salo or any kind of Nazi thing, but I think it's reasonable to presume it's a reference just because that's a pop culture thing. It is the one big takeaway from the movie. It made the poster. Rammstein referenced it in one of their music videos. It's niche cinema, but it's not exactly obscure either. It's published under the Criterion Collection, as is The Damned. Weird Al is a worldly kind of guy. I don't think it's a wild association to make in context. While Salo is queer in the sense of featuring gay sex among male fascist gang-raping teenagers, the joke extends the depiction of the perversion that the satirical figure of Petty here partakes in to a general transvestic kink, applied as a dominant onto submissive subjects. In a sense, it blends Salo and The Damned, both the evil aggressor and the gross transvestite. Even if you don't read an allusion to Nazi exploitation in the joke, its use of the transvestic kink picks the satirical Petty and his roadies as specifically repugnant for this queer transgression of societal norms. It engages in the homophobic cliché of disrespecting the sissy archetype, a traditionally feminine, submissive gay male partner, through depiction of sissy roadies as subhuman caricatures, while creating a humorous juxtaposition between the sissy archetype and the assumption that roadies would necessarily be butch, a traditionally masculine, dominant gay male partner. A joke that Weird Al later uses in Center Focus in his 1999 Truck Drivin' song. Part 2. The Spectre of Buffalo Bill. Truck Drivin' song, done in the style of truck driving country music, depicts a butch truck driver who is also a sissy crossdresser who derives sexual enjoyment from this hobby. He rambles about the struggle of driving a truck while casually dropping references to him cross-dressing as he does so.
Rolling down the highway until the break of dawn, driving a truck with my high heels on.
While this could be used to trans-feminist effect, challenging rigid gender stereotypes, Weird Al spends it in a traditionally cis-heteronormative manner to make the speaker a figure of disgust. The truck driver is specifically framed as perverted, with sexually charged, feminine accoutrements.
Oh, I don't mind when my stars and panties creep right up on me, and my nipple rings don't bother me too much.
This is used to evoke disgust in a manner similar to the transphobic caricatures of both Martin and, perhaps more relevantly, Buffalo Bill in the film Silence of the Lambs. Buffalo Bill is a male crossdresser who thinks he's a trans woman, and acts like a trans woman, but is supposed to just be a delusional man who fetishizes dressing up like a woman, and murders cis women as part of this fetish. The filmmakers make a half-hearted attempt to make it not be about trans women, but still gleefully played up the transphobic fears of a disgusting man putting on the costume of a woman to do his evil deeds, in a modern slasher genre equivalent of the Martin figure. The cross-dressing truck driver embodies this fear of the gross masculine man, transgressing gender norms for his own sexual pleasure. He would be seen as dangerous if we weren't ultimately simply laughing at him as a sissy, failing to live up to a masculine standard. At one concert during his 2018 ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised vanity tour, he reportedly introduced the song with an appropriately ill-advised spiel about how if he released it today, it would be considered problematic even though it's obviously a ripoff of Monty Python's 1975 song, The Lumberjack Song.
He likes to press wildflowers, he puts on women's clothing, and hangs around in bars.
Well, yeah, it is problematic, as is the Lumberjack Song.
And I thought you were so budge!
The fact that they have widely been considered acceptable in the past just points to the widespread transphobia of that time. Maintaining it in modern day means that he maintains a transphobic stance, even though societal pressures should convince him that this is a bad idea. The song already doesn't age well, and this stance will look awful in the years to follow. The theme of the pervy crossdresser shows up again in his 2006 song, Confessions Part 3, a parody of Usher's Confessions Part 2, in which the speaker describes various things that he did wrong in his relationship with a woman. One of these sins is having a secret, masochistic transvestic fetish.
Oh, and sometimes in private, really like to dress up like Shirley Temple and spank myself with a hockey stick.
The speaker is depicted as disgusting for this bizarre fetish. Though random elements are inserted into it, the joke is, at its heart, about a man cross-dressing, evocative of Martin or Buffalo Bill, and the emphasis on horrific perversion. Part 3. All there is to know about the crying game. Next, Weird Al has other jokes that are evocative of Dill from the Crying Game. He references the film in his 2003 mock interview with Celine Dion.
Favorite film about surprise genitalia?
The Crying Game.
With its surprise genitalia twist of the cishet male protagonist's attractive female love interest secretly being a trans woman, The Crying Game popularized the already existing transphobic myth that trans women are gay men who try to trick straight men into having sex with them by dressing as women. The myth frames heterosexual trans women as both repugnant sissy men who want to be women,
I wish I'd been a girly,
and scary dominant men who want to rape straight men.
Was it good for you?
Sometimes within the same caricature. Weird Al busts out this trope 3 times. Once in his 2011 song TMZ, and twice in his 1999 song Jerry Springer. TMZ, a parody of Taylor Swift's You Belong With Me, depicts TMZ exposing celebrities' various embarrassing secrets, like preparing to have sex with a crossdresser.
You just picked up some transvestite. Seconds later, it's up on the website.
This is probably a modern fictionalization of Danny Bonaducci's 1991 Trans Panic incident. Bonaducci picked up a female-presenting sex worker who was almost certainly a trans woman. He paid her to perform a blowjob, and then asked for vaginal sex, only to be told she didn't have a vagina. It's also possible that this was less verbal and more him grabbing her. Hard to say. Angry at the concept of a man tricking him into sex, he beat her bloody and was arrested later that night. Bonaducci's story was that he saw the sex worker as a random guy dressed as a woman and offered him a lift, only for the man to become randomly aggressive and incite a street brawl, framing it as a man attacked him.
You can see that my eyes have been kind of beaten. I can't open this one, and this one isn't that clear.
Danny Bonaducci, who played Danny Partridge on the 1970 show The Partridge Family, isn't saying much about his alleged assault on a transvestite.
The media reported on the incident with both participants' stories, but invariably referred to the sex worker as a transvestite prostitute. These days, Bonaducci references it as a funny anecdote about how he lacked the ability to determine that the sex worker was really a man, and that's how America remembers it.
I realized for the first time he's 220 pounds of transvestite hooker. So I just smack him as hard as I can. Not because I wanted to, I just figure violence is going to break out soon. I should be the one to start. Boom!
As far as I know, there has been no follow-up from a queer-positive angle, so I don't know for sure that the sex worker was a trans woman, but it seems probable to me, with the knowledge that this kind of thing happens all the time to trans sex workers. At the very least, it falls into a pattern of transphobic aggression, and is never framed to validate the sex worker, who was the victim at the heart of the incident. Weird Al's reference to it is solely as an embarrassing anecdote suffered by a celebrity. Even without the context of the allusion to the Bonaducci incident, the lyrics convey the image of a cishet male celebrity being tricked by a man dressed as a woman, in the manner of Dill from The Crying Game. Picked up is ambiguous, but could easily imply initiating sexual contact. The takeaway is of the cishet man being humiliated by his embarrassing mistake being revealed to the world in a way that makes him look like he would be gay if he weren't straight. At this point, mainstream society knows that it's bad form to laugh at a gay man for being gay, but it's still considered acceptable to laugh at a straight man for appearing gay in the context of him being straight. The lyrics are overtly transphobic and subtly homophobic on top of it. Meanwhile, Jerry Springer, a parody of Bare Naked Ladies 1 Week, is the natural evolution of the previous talk show jokes about the talk show Jerry Springer. It contains 5 transphobic jokes. 2 riffing on the Crying Game style horror of a cishet man being tricked into entering a romantic relationship with a trans woman, 2 generically antagonistic toward crossdressers, and 1 interphobic joke playing off of a presumed disgust of intersex people, which I'll get into later in this video. The Crying Game style jokes both frame the reveal of a trans woman as a subject worthy of disgust. Only their cishet male partners are framed sympathetically. It's taken as a given to be horrible for the man to learn that his partner, once had a deformity that she surgically altered, which is all transgender transition really is.
3 days since we heard the tale about the guy who learned his woman was a she-male.
And
there was one guy who I'm sure felt a little strange when he found out that his wife had a sex change.
These trans women are depicted as gross, shocking, and loathsome. It should also be noted that the label she-male, which is derivative of porn, is considered a transphobic slur. The song also references crossdressers as strange people to be viewed with disdain.
So it's been 1 week since they had the fight with the Siamese twins and then their death died.
And
pretty soon some ugly goon comes in the room and then it's boom in the face of some unsuspecting drag queen.
Of course, it appears that Weird Al doesn't draw a distinction between trans people and crossdressers. I suspect that he considers trans women to be men, cross-dressing and fooling cishet male partners, as is the framing of The Crying Game. He probably considered these 4 jokes to be in the same category, which lends the disdain for the Dill-esque trans women to the crossdressers. At the same time, Weird Al himself crossdresses. He released footage of himself cross-dressing as a child, and he cross-dresses as an adult, or otherwise depicts him or other men in androgynous ways. The difference is, he does so to be weird, not to challenge cis-heteronormativity, but honor the status quo, in depicting such weirdness as inherently incongruous with how society should function, and thus as a source of humor. Part 4. Misandrogyny and Interphobia. Weird Al just generally seems antagonistic toward androgyny and intersex people as an extension. Many of the music videos for his 2011 album Alpocalypse feature surreal gags in which male faces are superimposed on female bodies. In Perform This Way, a parody of Lady Gaga's Born This Way, his own face is superimposed onto a female body double to look absurd as he mocks Lady Gaga's outlandish styles of clothing. In Whatever You Like, a parody of the T.I. song of the same name, Weird Al is depicted as Tinkerbell and a beauty pageant winner. In Another Tattoo, a parody of B.O.B.'s Nothing on You, Many random and bizarre tattoos are paraded, including 3 pretty women with the male faces of the 3 Stooges. Not to mention a buxom mermaid with a grandfatherly beard. Though this is a specific trend of owlpocalypse, a similar gag done with an audio-visual disconnect is also used in the 6th episode of The Weird Al Show, in which a man screams like a little girl when Weird Al's self-insert character accidentally breaks his record-setting long nails. The fact that long nails are stereotyped as feminine seems relevant to this depiction. Outside of using digital manipulation to add transgender surrealism, he has a history of representing such a juxtaposition through standard physicality. In the music video for his 1985 song Like a Surgeon, a parody of Madonna's Like a Virgin, Weird Al copies her dramatic sensual dance moves as a man and thereby looking ridiculous. When performing it live, he does the exaggerated body movements while keyboardist Ruben Valterra dons one of her conical bras and pretends to look like a distinguished belly dancer, deriving humor from the absurdity of being a man doing a belly dance. Similarly, in the music video for Weird Al's 1992 song Smells Like Nirvana, the strange and chaotic atmosphere of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit video is parodied with people in the background doing random bits of weirdness, including the janitor cross-dressing with a tutu, not to mention one of the cheerleaders being played by a man in ill-fitting drag. It creates a notable contrast where Nirvana themselves would cross-dress on stage to challenge gender roles, while Weird Al employs cross-dressing to mock those who do so. A similar image appears in the 3rd Weird Al Show episode to parody Bill Nye the Science Guy in randomly depicting him cross-dressing as Brunhilde from Wagner's opera The Valkyrie.
All grass is green! All grass is green!
Likewise, in the music video for 2011's Party in the CIA, a parody of Taylor Swift's Party in the USA, Weird Al is depicted cross-dressing to illustrate the speaker disguised as a flight attendant as an absurd image. A sexy lady agent is also humorously depicted wearing the standard masculine suit and tie. Weird Al appears to be a fan of cross-dressing, specifically in the realm of cishet comedy spoofing gender stereotypes, while reinforcing them as a cultural norm, as is the case in the early 80s TV series Bosom Buddies. Bosom Buddies deals with the premise of 2 cishet men dressing as women to move into a female-only apartment complex, where they get close to 2 women they're attracted to, one of which has no idea that they're men and that she should have her guard up around them, like a less murderous Buffalo Bill. And Weird Al references it in his 1999 monologue, Albuquerque. Albuquerque, included as a bonus track at the end of his album Running with Scissors, is a rambling collection of loosely connected bizarre anecdotes. One of them involves the speaker being robbed by a villain called the One-Nostriled Man. More on him in a minute. When the One-Nostriled Man knocks on the speaker's door, he asks who it is 3 times with different affectations, the second of which sounds like a woman.
I say, who is it? No answer. Who is it? There's no answer.
This is a reference to a running gag in Bosom Buddies, where the 2 men must assume female voices to ask who is at the door every time there is a knock on it.
Who is it? Who is it? Good. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? There's no answer.
And then there's the One-Nostril Man himself, rendered disgusting by happening to be born intersex.
So finally I go over and I open the door, and just as I suspected, it's some big fat hermaphrodite with a flock of seagulls haircut and only 1 nostril. Oh man, I hate it when I'm right.
The One-Nostril Man is distinguished by deformities that he couldn't be responsible for, and we are led to view him with disgust for just happening to have been born with uncommon traits. A flock of seagulls haircut is the result of a deliberate choice, and would be reasonable to mock someone over, as it is a really silly fashion choice. But singling out traits like being intersex and having a weird-looking nose is just mean-spirited bullying behavior. It's also worth noting that hermaphrodite is considered a slur. It's intersex. Hermaphrodite is for animals and plants. As there is nothing to indicate that the one-nostriled man is nude, and the speaker can recognize him on sight as intersex, I suspect the implication is that he has Klinefelter syndrome. He is overweight, and I presume he has traditionally female fat distribution, giving him breasts and maybe some other attributes, maybe some unusual body proportions. Yeah, what kind of total jackass makes fun of a person for that? Trump? Through the framing of Albuquerque, Weird Al encourages his fans to find this man repugnant and effectively encourages bullying of intersex people. Like me. Way to be nice to your fans. Throw your intersex fans under the bus. This interphobia isn't unique to Albuquerque. In addition to its other various transphobic jokes, Jerry Springer features a random intersex person as an example of a gross, outlandish trait.
5 days since they had the show where the hermaphrodite, the slut, and the cracko.
It displays the conservative disdain for uncommon people not accepted by mainstream society. Intersex people are considered beneath consideration, solely for being uncommon. Weird Al also references intersex people as random, gross individuals in his 1999 mock interview with Cher.
He wanted to know if we would do a charity for,
The United Albanian Hermaphrodite Society?
Uh-huh.
That was a great show.
The jokes function on the presumption of randomness and the traits being too obscure to apply to any of his fans. Through mockery, he furthers the stigma that keeps intersex people closeted. But it's not that much of an obscure trait. Intersex people have actual organizations lobbying for rights. We have a neat pride flag and everything. Purple ring on gold ground. Klinefelter syndrome and intersex disorders in general are relatively uncommon, but because there are a lot of people in the world overall, there are still a lot of intersex people. Researchers from a Danish study estimate that 0.2% of newborn males have Klinefelter syndrome. Extrapolating that out to the general population means 8 million people worldwide, about the same as the population of Hong Kong. Meanwhile, intersex people in general are 1.7% of the population, 131 million, more than the population of Mexico. Yes, they're a minority of the overall human population, but there can still be a huge number of them compared to, say, the population of your hometown, or the 12 million albums Weird Al has sold. Even if it was just one guy in the world, like the one-nostriled man, it would still be a rude and disrespectful thing for him to do. Just now, it's a rude and disrespectful thing that fits into the systemic oppression of trans and intersex individuals. His general thematic disdain for androgyny and portrayal of it as bizarre also shows up in other places. In the 1988 Peter and the Wolf collaboration with Wendy Carlos, a random plot point involves Bruce the Duck being reincarnated as actress Shirley MacLaine. Aside from just being a random celebrity, the androgynous connection between a masculine character and a female celebrity is supposed to be absurd, something that just makes no sense. Imagine having a character that involves masculinity and femininity together! Similarly, in the 2003 mock interview with Eminem, he portrays Eminem as the same person as Missy Elliott.
Mr. Marshall Mathers, also known as Eminem, also known as The Real Slim Shady, also known as Missy Misdemeanor Elliott. I'm sorry, should I call you Marshall or Missy?
Marshall, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
in addition to being absurd on the face of it, this conflation is used to mock Eminem for insufficient masculinity, as part of a series of harsh portrayals as revenge for him not giving permission for Weird Al to parody his Lose Yourself video. Weird Al goes on to portray the satirical Eminem as gay, into Weird Al, and unwilling to accept that Weird Al isn't interested in him back, embodying the repugnant sissy archetype.
come on, Marshall. You came out of the closet years ago. Do you remember what it was like when you first came out?
Like when I first came out, I noticed the difference, like when I first came out.
Wait, are you hitting on me?
Yeah.
A similar joke is seen in his Cher mock interview about the satirical Cher thinking that Courtney Love is a drag queen.
What do you think about Courtney Love?
Drag queens are so great.
Courtney Love is a woman.
Oh, well, that's so ridiculous.
Okay.
Androgyny is regarded as an insult. If Cher truly thought that Courtney Love were a drag queen, this would be an insult to Courtney Love as someone insufficiently feminine. This joke of unflatteringly comparing a woman to a man pops up in the 10th Weird Al Show episode when minor character Dr. Phillips is informed that they're on TV. He turns to the camera and waves to his mother. We think that it's about him signaling his mother across the airwaves, but it turns out that he mistook the cameraman for her.
We're on TV right now, look.
Hi, Mom! I'm sorry, that cameraman looks just like my mother.
Aside from poking fun at the "hi mom" cliché, it functions on the joke that a woman could be so mannish that her own son could mistake an actual man for her. Likewise, in the 1996 song "I'm So Sick of You," the speaker describes a female subject as disgusting for, among other things, having the androgynous trait of back hair.
You're belching everywhere, fouling up the air, then you use my razor to shave your back hair.
We see the gross female smelliness show up again in Albuquerque with another pointless dig at Albanians. What did Albanians ever do to you?
You know, I'd never been on a real airplane before, and I gotta tell you, it was really great. Except that I had to sit between two large Albanian women with excruciatingly severe body odor.
Aside from being unpleasant to deal with, the joke involves women being unfeminine in a way tied to being from a strange foreign nation. In the music video for 2006's Virus Alert, the speaker's claim of the stinky cheese virus, having the power to legally change one's name to Reggie, is accompanied by a visual depicting a woman transforming into a man, deriving comedic horror from a transgender transformation. Insufficient femininity is portrayed as both degrading and gross. In a sense, these cisgender female subjects become analogous to trans women and suffer associated trans misogyny, while also suffering the distaste shown to trans men, being ostensibly female subjects, pushing the boundaries of accepted gender norms. It's a twofer.
Are you ready to polka?
Weird Al has a tradition of one song per album being a polka version of popular songs. Usually a medley, using a collection of lyrics from other artists. For many of these, he creates a humorous juxtaposition from his silly way of singing serious lyrics, and he emphasizes androgyny for the sake of surreal humor. In the earliest example of his transphobia that I could find, 1984's Polkas on 45, he quotes lyrics from Berlin's Sex. Berlin has it as a sexy duet between a man and a woman. Weird Al sings the woman's part himself, making it seem especially surreal. It is worth noting that this is an especially deep cut that most fans are unaware of, but it stands out as significant within the general trend of transphobia throughout his career as his first flirtation with the subject matter. More memorably, in his 1992 medley Polka Your Eyes Out, he quotes the Divinals' "I Touch Myself," positioning him as a female speaker describing masturbation.
Hey, I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. Oh.
The phrasing of "I touch myself" is specific to the female experience of masturbation, creating an image of absurdity. Of course, trans men would experience this typically female form of masturbation in their masculine way, but this framing suggests that such a thing is absurd and denies their existence. In 2006's Polka-Rama, he quotes the Pussycat Dolls' "Don'cha," mockingly taking the role of a sexy woman.
Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? Don't you wish your girlfriend was a freak like me? Don't ya?
This verse is immediately juxtaposed with lyrics from The Killer's "Somebody Told Me."
Somebody told me you had a boyfriend who looked like a girlfriend that I had in February of last year.
It derives humor from androgyny and mocks the concept of someone dating an androgynous person, similar to the crying game style jokes seen in TMZ and Jerry Springer. More recently, in 2011's Polka Face, he quotes Katy Perry's "I Kissed a Girl."
I kissed a girl and I liked it, the taste of her cherry chapstick.
So yeah, one more male face superimposed on female body. Intention to be absurd, androgyny is absurd, And like, it can still work with a guy because sometimes there are bisexual guys who might think that they're gay and then experiment with girls. Hope their boyfriends don't mind it. This is a thing that can happen, Al. Finally, this one's more indirect, but it contributes to his general transphobic vibe. As Star Wars has had enduring popularity, so too has his 1985 song, Yoda.
I know Darth Vader's really got you annoyed, but remember if you kill him then you'll be unemployed.
A parody of the Kinks' 1970 song, Lola. Lola is about a cishet guy getting picked up by either a cross-dresser or a trans woman.
Girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world.
It has its fans in the LGBT community, but I can't imagine Weird Al has a very nuanced take on it, likely perceiving it as a deceptive hookup in the manner of Aerosmith's Dude Looks Like a Lady. This is his framing of cishet guys getting with trans women in Jerry Springer, and the reference to Bonaducci's trans panic instant in TMZ. Every time Yoda is brought out as relevant, keeps Lola relevant in such a framing as to make all his fans view it with the same level of nuance, which is to say none. I really felt uncomfortable when he performed it to children in the Weird Al show, encouraging a whole new generation to listen to Lola without a queer-positive framing. I honestly cringe every time I hear Yoda now, because I can't escape the notion that he's profiting off of the mockery of trans women. At one point, I felt like Weird Al's material was transgressive. His many references to androgyny challenged cis-heteronormativity to some extent, even if it was within a negative framing. However, now society has progressed and left him behind. He's maintained his transphobic slant over the years, bringing back old songs, mock interviews, and a few Weird Al show clips in modern concerts. His history of transphobia isn't sequestered to the past, but is an active part of his current career and its fandom. There are now better options out there. Even as someone who was once a huge fan, I have to say, I am tired of Weird Al.
He who's tired of Weird Al is tired of life.
Such is the millennial condition.
Driving a truck with my high heels.